MSP for Edinburgh Eastern, SNP leadership candidate Ash Regan. Thank you so much for being on the programme. What's your position on Gary Lineker then?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Sophie?
What's your position on Gary Lineker?
Yes, I was asked this the other night, actually, and I hadn't seen his tweets. But yeah, I think the way he's been treated is pretty terrible, actually. He should be allowed to express his views. And I think morally, what's going on at the moment with the Conservatives and their position on this is morally reprehensible.
Strong words there on the row over that Gary Lineker tweet. Well, look, I'm very keen to talk about your own pitch, right? You want to be the next leader of the SNP. You want to be the next First Minister. What is the big idea?
Well, as you can understand, the membership of the SNP are very concerned about the way that the UK is going. If you think about what we're facing at the moment, we've got skyrocketing energy costs because of the Conservative mismanagement of the economy. Inflation is making everything much more expensive for families, including food. And we were dragged out of the EU against our will, which is having a disproportionate impact on the Scottish economy. So things are looking difficult at the moment up here. And I think it's entirely right to be able to look at this question again of independence. And that is something that obviously the members of the SNP are very interested in. When and how would we be able to get to an independent Scotland?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? You launched your campaign with the slogan, independence, nothing less, but the government in Westminster have refused to grant the referendum. So how do you get there?
They have. And that is obviously within their gift to refuse a referendum. And if you think about it, the reason that they're refusing a referendum is because they don't want to allow Scotland to express its democratic will at the ballot box. But what we need to remember here is that not many countries achieve their independence through referendums. Actually, that's fairly unusual. And actually, it's much more normal to use a scheduled election, to use the ballot box in order for the people to express their will.
The problem is, though, if you say you'd use an election as a de facto referendum, but who are you to say that people are only voting on independence? They might think the SNP's got the best policy on the cost of living. They might think that you, Ash Regan, have got the best policy when it comes to the Gender Recognition Act. And that's not how the Westminster government would see it either, is it?
So the de facto referendum is it's a similar strategy, but it's a different strategy. The de facto referendum is fought on a single occasion, on a single issue. And you're quite right to point out that at the moment, with the things that are going on right now, energy crisis, cost of living crisis, problems in the NHS across the UK, the public will quite rightly not want to fight a single issue de facto referendums. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is the voter empowerment mechanism. And this sets up a permanent mechanism to run each and every election in Scotland as an opportunity for the people of Scotland to express their will over whether they want to govern themselves. So the trigger point for that would be 50% plus one. That is a strategy that used to be widely accepted. This was an SNP policy up until about the year 2000. It was previously accepted by the Conservatives in Westminster. Margaret Thatcher herself had said on this policy years ago that this was perfectly democratic and it was a legitimate way for the Scottish people to express their will. So I expect that the UK government would understand that democratic mandate if that was expressed by the people of Scotland and that they would recognise it. They often start off saying no, but then they always come to the table and eventually say yes.
OK, we'll have to see on that one. Now, I hope this doesn't sound too harsh, but you have got an absolute mountain to climb in this leadership competition. A recent Ipsos Scotland poll found 32% saying Kate Forbes would make the best First Minister. Humza Yousaf was on 24%. You're on 8%. If you don't win, who are you going to endorse?
I'm in this competition to win it. I've been having a lot of support expressed to me by the membership. And we have to remember, it's fairly difficult, I think, to get an accurate idea of what the SNP membership are thinking. At the moment, we understand that there's a large amount of the membership that are still undecided. It's a very short contest. So it's certainly true to say that I am probably the least well-known out of the candidates and with less name recognition. And it is an opportunity for me to work that bit harder, to set out my stall, if you like, on what I'm proposing to do. But I have had many people get in touch with me recently to say that they think that I am the only hope for the SNP. We are at a crossroads at the moment in terms of where we go next. And I believe I'm the candidate that is setting out a credible, democratic means for Scotland to express its will at the ballot box and give Scotland that choice over their own future.
I thought it was interesting to hear that you say that you think it's a conflict of interest that Peter Murrell, Nicola Sturgeon's husband, to remain as the SNP chief executive while this leadership contest is going along. I mean, he doesn't have a role in the ballot. Why do you think that?
Well, effectively, he's running the contest to replace his wife. And I think if we think of that in a different way, that would be like Carrie counting the votes for Boris's successor. And I think many people would think that that would be fairly unusual. I think there is a conflict of interest here. My campaign team, we've set out that we think it should be an independent third-party company that should be running the contest, and that we've also asked for there to be a neutral observer as well, just to make sure everything's above board. We need to be careful in this too. We're the largest party in Scotland, and the person that wins this contest will not just be leader of the SNP, but they'll actually also become the first minister of the country. This is very significant. It's very important. And it's important for both the members of the SNP, but also the wider country, that there's trust in this process, that it's all above board and it's transparent.
Now, you disagreed with Nicola Sturgeon over the gender recognition reform bill. You resigned from government so you could vote against it. Nicola Sturgeon said you didn't approach her with your concerns. Is that true?
I did have many conversations inside government with special advisors. I raised this issue in 2019 at Cabinet with Nicola Sturgeon. So my views inside government were well known on this issue. So
she's not really being honest, in your opinion, then?
Well, as I said, I also signed an open letter with many of my colleagues in 2019 to the newspapers. So I don't think it's credible to say that my views were not well known.
OK. Now, just finally, you said earlier in the interview that you were the least well-known candidate in the competition. So I thought we'd do something about that with a couple of quick-fire questions to end. Ready? Who's your political hero?
I don't really have one. I admire many people who've made big social changes, but there's certainly not anyone in the recent history that I would name particularly.
Ever broken the law?
Not that I can remember, no. Eating,
Guilty pleasure?
Definitely. Sorry?
Guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. Watching a very lightweight television when I'm tired.
Go on, what example? Give an example. I'm terrible on this stuff as well, so no judgment here.
Bridgerton or something like that, a guilty pleasure.
And what's your greatest achievement?
Well, I was very proud, actually, of being able to stand up in the Scottish Parliament, with a very small number of people, actually, and make the case for the fact that there was a conflict of rights under the Gender Recognition Reform Bill. There was a great sense, I think, in Scotland that the voices of women particularly hadn't been heard during this process. And so I was proud to give voice to that during the Stage 3 debate and raise those issues that women had expressed to me and make that case in public for them and speak for them. OK, thank you very much for being on the programme. Good to have you on one of a series of debates we're doing, of interviews, shall I say, that we're doing with the leadership candidates. Thank you.